We're ready to get started. We're running about 15 minutes late. We were going to start at 4:30, so welcome everybody. How's everybody doing? Dr. Hyde, you had asked that we do some work with Randy about superintendent board strengthening, how we could work together as a better board. So we brought Randy in. Help us move forward. It's a study session, so we don't have any roll call or anything really to speak of.
Is this okay to come on up? Or?
Yes, sir. We don't normally do it from up here. We usually sit down around the table.
So I don't want to break any protocols or practices that you guys have. But, you know, we were all together. Harvest, you couldn't make that last conversation. I was impressed by how everybody started sharing. It felt like we stuck our toes in the water of excellence and had some momentum with that. I followed up that conversation with an email, which is reproduced in this one-page handout, it's just a simple list of possible next steps for you guys. I tried to send out an email just about 5 minutes ago, and it's stuck. It's not reaching you, but it's some of you veterans remember when we were doing a SurveyMonkey opportunity. It's sort of a possibility there for you guys to take 5 minutes, contribute to a proposal that I would make to you for a strategic framework, the thing that would go in that left column of your agenda that you would start working from and appraising your work off of. But anyway, eventually it should hit your mailbox. But if you don't have to do anything unless the team chooses to do something with that. But there are a lot of very simple ideas in this list of about 10 options. And then I think we used the collection of we one-page tools during that conversation. So Harvest, you definitely got a copy now. It's the one that's several, is it over 10 pages, Bill? We always say don't kill a lot of trees. Oh, good. So it's just a possibility, that email. It was the first thing on the list. Beyond having that immediate past conversation, that you might choose as a team to do that SurveyMonkey step, at least give me some fuel for a proposal. And then we were going to have a follow-up conversation, which is tonight. So I would like to just follow up with questions or ideas and creative thoughts you might have had, not just from that last conversation, but maybe some things you've been talking about with constituents and fellow board members since then. Okay? I don't want to take up your time rambling on and on. Monica, I think you're in this conversation too, if I remember right.
The last time?
Yeah. So what thoughts do you guys have about habits? Dave and I were talking about how in baseball we're always working on technique, always, never letting up. So this could be a conversation about simple, fundamental techniques of good to great governing. Got a lot.
Back to my initial request, I was trying to make the point that I thought it was important for the board to evaluate itself and the superintendent. And the first step to move in that direction is to select an instrument that would be used going forward. And since we don't have anything in writing and haven't done anything, given any written reports, I simply thought it was, as a first step, it's important to get to adopt some instrument. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
It just has to, I think it's more important to take the first step than it is to try to necessarily get it right the first time. And so I think I would advocate for going with something that's simple. And at the last meeting we had, we talked about looking at, I thought it was 4 different instruments, and we were going to vote on which were the first and second choices, and then we would compile that.
Wow.
And essentially go with the most votes
So did that happen?
No,
Well,
we haven't done that.
We have them, we just got them.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Typically, the first step is decide who you are and what you want to accomplish out of that. And then you develop the instrument off of that set of standards or expectations. But, my thought is that's progress. You guys are working that way.
but we haven't had those conversations to talk about where we want to go.
Right.
So in lieu of that, I thought it was better to adopt some instrument, any instrument, and then that hopefully gets the train going, and then we can modify it, find out what the strengths and weaknesses are as we go forward. But
That's great, Bill.
that was what I was thinking of trying to do. And then we need to, I think these ones that were handed out, these are for the evaluative instruments for the superintendent. And I've seen a little bit of information on evaluative instruments, or not instruments, but something less well-structured than that for evaluating the board itself. So it would be helpful for me to separate those into two categories, if in fact they should be different instruments, which I believe they probably should be. And I don't know, maybe since we ought to start with ourselves before we
Yeah.
critique anybody else. So as a starting place, I'd love to have you either share some instruments that we could use for evaluating ourselves, and even if it's rudimentary, it gets us moving. And then after we've done that, as primitive as that first effort might be, then move on and do the same thing. We're in a little better position in terms of forms for the superintendent, because we've got 3 here, and I think there is talk of a 4th somewhere, but I don't know what the story is with that.
Well, to just jump in, Bill, if you go to CASB.org, go to the Board of Superintendent Strengthening pages, you'll see a lot of e- and hard copy kinds of instruments and supports. You can take almost anything and use it as an appraising, evaluative kind of effort, including the left column, like we've talked about, running off of core values. And you can do simple things like, how'd we do tonight? How'd we do tonight with our core value of respect? How'd we do tonight with our, that simple kind of habit-forming, accountability appraising effort is just hugely important. Here's another simple thing, and we do this all the time in big conferences and small places. It's called Plus Delta, and we could do that tonight. You could get home tonight. You'll have a Survey Monkey. It takes 30 seconds. 3 things that you really appreciated about the effort, and 1 thing that you could improve upon. Plus Delta. We have that available to you. You guys would send in your insights to me. I would compile it, send back some distant coaching. That kind of thing. That's about as simple as it gets, and it also puts into play your CASB staff as a constant support. That kind of thing. It's interesting, this Superintendent Evaluation Challenge, just to put it out there. I've been around both the evaluative challenge for a long time and the strategic planning challenge. The reputation that we have with both those efforts is very interesting. We get real passionate. We put things into play. We apply our learning and our hopes, and then we fade away very rapidly. And in strategic planning, we say those babies, those plans just sit up on that shelf, or they sit out there on the driveway gathering rust and dust. We do the same thing with evaluation practices. So the idea is to get it simple and effective for who you guys are. Okay? That's why when we're talking strategic planning with boards, we're always talking about simplified strategic planning, simplified accountability practices, things that you can own and apply and do effectively.
I only have a vague idea as to what a monkey survey is. I think I've maybe participated in 1 or 2 in my life. But
right.
So is that something that if we all wanted to do that, then you have that, you just present that to us, or what are the mechanics?
Typically, it works like this. You get an email. You do email, right?
I,
So you get an email,
not
and there's a
every day.
link inside the email. And the way we do it, we always say, it's going to take you about 3 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes. We never go beyond 5 minutes with a SurveyMonkey. So you link or press on that email link, and it goes to this online survey or accountability appreciative or creating kind of opportunity. You just add your insights or thoughts to the questions, the categories, that kind of thing. And then the system compiles those things. We look at them, send them back as a report with that coaching, which is a form of encouragement, right, Dave? Great coaching is, number one, encouragement. It's not shaming, it's not blaming, it's putting out ideas that you might want to think about in terms of improving.
Well, I'd
It's
be in
really
favor of
easy,
that,
Bill.
But I'd like to hear from my colleagues as to whether they're interested in doing that.
Connie, you interested in that?
Not really.
Mr. Rolla?
Oh, I'm mixed right now.
Mr. Thomas, are you interested in that?
Yes.
And I'm actually interested in it also. I'd like to see how we feel we're doing as a board in our own thoughts.
So, it's no different than what we try to promote or encourage with the superintendent's accountability and development. Our best practicing, great practicing boards have some system of constant feedback, either coming from themselves, their maybe one employee, maybe the Monica side of things, constituents that see them in practice, that kind of thing. So however you want to create that feedback system is just an encouragement to get it done. It doesn't have to be SurveyMonkey, doesn't have to be focus grouping, but there are all kinds of ideas, and you can get some of those off the CASB.org site. But the simple idea about getting better as leaders or baseball players is you've got to get constant feedback, or you're typically going to be stuck in a pretty big rut with improvement and not even ever approaching excellence. So big encouragement there, you guys, to get something that gives you feedback on how strong you are, how well you're doing with different aspects of governing. Okay, so maybe enough with that.
Well, 2-3 years ago at CASB, we were conferencing, we were at, I don't think nobody was on the board but me at that time, but met with one of those workshops with school board individuals, and they said that they did a debriefing after every board just to ask, how did that meeting go? And I thought, we tried it a couple times, but when you're going till 10, 11 o'clock at night, nobody wants a debriefing. They just want to go home. So, but if we get done early enough, I think maybe we could debrief on how this meeting went. What could we have done to have a better meeting? What were some of the situations that we have, and be able to make sure we do it in a positive way and not in a negative way, because if you do it in a negative way, then you got problems. No different than if I told a kid, you didn't do very good today, but you sucked. You got to get it up. He's going to go from here to here, and now you got to start all over and bring him up. And so
It's really interesting, Dave, when we're in workshop environments and we do this look at how everybody's personally experience evaluation, it's not a real healthy experience in general. Most people are a little afraid of even starting to talk about this topic because of their own personal experience. What we emphasize is how to be encouragement-centered, appreciatively centered, and it's not about that shame-blame thing. It's about all of us getting better for kids, and we need fuel to do that. And so how do you gain the fuel on a regular basis? We have other ways of doing it with quarterly kinds of appraisals where you don't do them as a debrief every meeting. You schedule a work session and debrief quarterly. I saw Harvest taking a look at the back page of your collection, and that's a little bit of a planning calendar. Our great practices boards have plans for how they're going to excel for the sake of the kids. They don't just accept it's okay to be okay and that somehow we're going to get to our destination without a plan. So you might want to take a look at that and see what gets prompted in you. Just another thing.
So before we move on, is there Mr. Chairman, what's your sense of, what do we have for closure on this topic at this point?
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, Randy's given us some ideas of what we could do. We could use, the plus delta. We could do a debrief after each meeting. If it doesn't go too long, we could do it quarterly. We could do whatever we want to do. I don't know what evaluation tool you want to use for the board.
I'm open to, I just want to try to get the ball rolling, and I'm less concerned about what the specifics of what instrument or what we do, as long as we do something. And then once we start doing it, then we can adjust depending on how well we like it or how well we don't like it. But step one is to take the first step, and the first step is for us to agree that we're going to do something. And the specifics are far less important to me than simply agreeing to do something to evaluate ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I believe that we do need to figure out, are we doing our job right? Are we not? What's not working? What is working? Let's build on that and fix what's not working, and that type of stuff. I think we need to do that.
There's a board in the state that we never have gotten away from what we call the donut philosophy. So we're always drawing these donuts. It could be how we debrief a meeting, or it could be how they do their strategic action thinking and doing. But the donut philosophy is simply this. We tend to concentrate, especially in this day and age of anxiety, in the whole, what we're missing, instead of the immense gifting and strength that we already have. What we know about healthy cultural and leadership development is you take what you've been given and develop from there. You don't look for what's missing. You develop strengths from what you have. And a great easy way to get the ball rolling with appraising and evaluative practices is just simply do the donut on your own function. What do we really appreciate about this board? That's a little bit like that 3 pluses and 1 delta thing. But there's so much to appreciate in almost every endeavor. It's not funny, and we seem to just pass it on by as an opportunity. So lots of options. If you guys would like, if you're a little uncomfortable processing any of this, just ask me again. I'll keep sending you ideas. But I really believe in what Bill was getting at. Oftentimes, when we haven't had a continuous improvement reputation or we're stuck making that happen, the best thing is simply move something down the road. Take a step. Just start seeing how it works. And then you can retool as you go. Can't encourage you more on that.
We could switch to the instrument for the superintendent. What I think we had agreed last time is we had 4 instruments, and each of us were going to select the first 2, our first and second choice, and then aggregate, tally our votes, and go with the form that received the most votes. And again, I think that's an okay first step to get us moving. Do you have any response to that? And I'd like to have confirmation from the other members of the board that we're still in agreement that that's what we're going to do for the form for the superintendent.
Quick comment, one of the best, longest running boards of excellence we ever had never took the instruments seriously. They took the practice seriously, and they literally came in with individualized rating systems. So Dave comes in with a rating system based on 5 baseballs being excellent. Harvest comes in with popcorn boxes. I'm just kidding, harvest, but that's how they did it. And their number one thing was to appraise through conversation based on aligned time. That their first and foremost responsibility was aligned time to what's wildly important for our chief exec to be doing. And so that board time was spent on that, and appraising is, if you get stuck thinking it's about an annual instrument, that's what we call legal minimal. We're mandated in the state of Colorado to do that, but that's not excellence. That's minimal. So how do you do the aligned time way of doing tools? How do you do the ongoing appraising, not just of your work, but also the superintendent's? Waiting for an annual thing is, I'll just say it this way, not only is it minimally legal, it's lame.
Well, there's nothing that's been done in writing in the past, in the recent past, and I'm just trying to get us back on track.
Yeah.
And so if it's an imperfect instrument in the first go-round, so be it. But
My encouragement here, Bill, would be go as simple as you can. Again, our typical first level work with this kind of challenge is it's too complicated. And we fade from owning it and we lose it as a practice. So as simple as you can make it, and we've got lots of simple instruments to help you get the concept going.
Mr. Chairman, are we in agreement on that?
Are we in agreement on that, Connie?
What does he want?
That we're gonna use the evaluation tool like we talked about in the meeting, right? This is what we talked about. We're gonna pick one of these. We're gonna bring it back. This is the one I picked. This is the one Bill picks. This is the one Harvest picks. This is the one Dave picks. This is the one that we picked. And then you see which ones come out to have the most. And then work from there and decide what we're gonna take. If we like something in one more than we did in two, that we'll work together and put it together, and we'll have us an evaluation tool. It's not gonna be perfect, because it don't have to be perfect, but it gives us a place to start. We're gonna evaluate the superintendent on this, that, and that. So that's what we had talked about, when we were talking about this evaluation tool, and that's why I had Randy come in, because he can help us put it together, I believe, a little bit easier than us just trying to put it together. We'll try, put it together. We'll take 1, 2, and 3, because that's all we have. Dr. Hyde, there was only 3 that we had last time. I thought there was 4 or 5, but there was only 3. So Monica printed all 3 of these. So let's take a look at them, see what part of them you like. Maybe you like the whole thing. Maybe you don't like any of them. And if you don't, we'll just have that conversation also. So, it won't
Or
be
you
done
guys,
tonight.
oh, sorry, Tim.
It won't be done tonight, but it will be done, you know, in the very near future. So let's take these and look at them, and do we have a consensus that we can agree to do that?
I already evaluate 2, so I'm picking 2. So that's my vote on number 2 already. So I'm not sure how long we're gonna take, how long it's gonna be before we get to doing this, but I'm picking 2 already.
I liked number 2 last time also, so, but Dr.
I
Hyde has
just
an opinion.
wanted to see if we had, the board agrees to go ahead with this. And then the second part of that is I would request that the chair set a time, a date, when our vote or opinions will be collected and we hammer it out.
Okay.
So that would be the second part. Can we set a date for doing that?
Yeah, we can set a date. How long is it gonna take you to look at them, Mr. Rolla?
Well, I think, aren't these the same ones we looked through before, Monica?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should already have a consensus of what this is about. Because I think I was the first one that sent in through email number 2. So I already know I like number 2. Because we did this the last time. So,
Did you like all of number 2? Did you like,
Yeah.
did you just like all of number 2? And
I
how
like
about
number
you,
2.
Harvest? You liked all of number 2?
Yes.
And did you look at number 2, Mr. Rolla? Did you?
Last time. So if we already have 3 people with number 2, I guess that's what we'll go with. Because Harvest And
Well, I
you
mean-
said you had chosen, and Connie, and I didn't hear Dr. Hyde.
I haven't,
He
I
hasn't
haven't
looked
looked
at 'em
at
yet.
them,
He just got them.
so I haven't voted.
So he gets
So-
to look at them, and,
So, if you already have your decision, then I would say that we have a special meeting next Tuesday, or when we have our work study next Thursday, that we maybe decide at that time, because that's the problem that we ran in the first time we were doing this, is that we kept pushing it, and, you know, it almost sounds like we weren't accountable for it. This time, if we have it in our agenda for the next study session or special meeting, whatever, this way we hold ourselves accountable and we can get it done instead of trying to push it. So I'm just saying, maybe next Thursday when we have the regular agenda meeting, that we could take a half hour or so and discuss it at that time.
that sound fair to you?
Yes.
Sound fair to you, Connie?
Sure,
Bill, does that
Is
sound
this,
fair to
are
you?
we talking about Tuesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday at what time?
What time's our normal time do we start on Thursday?
4:30.
Monica, 4:30? So, we can either go a little bit later, or we can go, you can't get here much earlier, huh?
No, sir.
So let's plan on going a little bit later, then we'll make this the last,
So
subject of
we'll try to-
conversation.
So you
Well,
already, for next Thursday, you have Biz Bash, so you have to leave by 6:30
Okay,
next Thursday.
okay.
So your
But that's
max-
okay, they can continue. I can go to that function. And if it takes a little bit longer, they can continue while I'm gone, so, let's plan on that.
Okay, 4:30 on Thursday.
So we'll be here anyway, so,
Oh, okay.
And place it as a discussion item?
yes.
So a
Yeah.
thought or two,
Yes.
I would encourage you to consider this step, which is a great one, as a piloting step, sort of a working draft, and that when you're finished with it, you evaluate your experience, and then make sure that when you start the next school year, you have an agreement for both process and tools that will be applied for that whole season. Okay? And make sure you check the contract for Dr. J about timing, deadlines, that kind of a thing. That makes sense? And lastly, I'm volunteering to do an assessment of you guys based on what we call core disciplines and practices. It'll only take you 5 minutes on that goofy survey monkey, but at least you will have owned, first and foremost, your own performance accountability at the same time or just before you assess Dr. J's. I'm volunteering,
Are we up for that?
I'm
up
okay
for it.
with it.
okay?
Curious to see.
Or you guys can talk about it next week, make it official.
Well, yeah, but we could talk about it now. I mean, you interested in doing that, Harvest? It'd take about 3 to 5 minutes, Randy says, so.
Sure.
So, and you'll send us an email with the link, right?
Yep.
How about
I
you,
already
Mr. Rowland? You good?
Yeah.
you already did it? Monica?
Of course.
Yep, she did.
No,
No, I'm just kidding. I have it.
she's talking about the
It's
framework.
in your inbox.
Okay.
Yeah, that's framework, that's not a quarterly assessment.
The
You
survey.
okay with that, Dr. Hyde?
You bet.
So you'll get that out to us,
Yes, I will.
Another topic that is, I think, a source of a lot of friction is that there's disagreement among us about the articulation of responsibilities or authority between the superintendent and the board. And there have, in the last few weeks, a number of things have come up that the board has discussed before the board came to any final opinion or stance, the superintendent took action on these things. And that, to me, that is premature, and it's usurping the authority of the board. And how would we go about trying to evaluate that situation and then possibly address it if we feel that there's an imbalance there?
It's interesting, last week I was working with a team and they use a language called ducks in a row. And last week they actually started physically having those little rubber duckies in a row. My thought is more on the long distance way of thinking about this, Bill, that you guys may be having, or you particularly may be having a sense of disconnect or something that's not working the way it should. But that's first and foremost a board responsibility to get that cleared up, whether it's protocols, strategy, focus. And, I think we can all agree you guys aren't there yet as a team. And that would be really good to get to. And then you can measure and hold each other accountable for when you get diffused, distracted from these wildly important focus areas. But that's part of that strategic framework that you don't have. I can only put it out as an encouragement. It's not a gotta do in the state of Colorado, but it is one of our best and great practices that the highly effective boards do. And then when they have a sense of things getting a little out of whack, the idea is you get together as a team, assess, appraise, and redirect or refocus your work. But it's a board responsibility. We often say that the chief exec, the one employee, is simply the paid extension of you guys. Paid extension of you. If I'm being too hard on anybody, you got to speak up. Talk to me later. Great topic. I've got a team on the other side of the state right now where they're walking through some of this. It's a collective sense of frustration, and at first it seemed to be about a board member, then it seemed to be about the superintendent. But what they're getting to is that it's about all of us. Where have we been with our approach to being good or great at governing for the sake of kids? That's where it all starts. And it's all about desire. Do you want to be the best you can be for kids? Getting in touch with that will be your core fuel. Okay, Bill, am I avoiding an answer to your question? You got to speak to me. What?
We can't get into the specifics.
Right.
And so, the devil's in the details. And we're stuck. We're stuck.
Well, it's a little bit like what you were saying about appraising or evaluative practices. It's that Alice in Wonderland encounter with the Cheshire Cat. That's what it is. And we all know what that situation was like. She walks up to the Cheshire Cat looking for directions. The Cheshire Cat says, "Where do you want to get to?" And she says, "I don't know." And the Cheshire Cat says back, "Oh, I guess it doesn't matter. Do you guys know where you want to go, and you won't know what the superintendent should be doing on your behalf?" And that's a clarity challenge everywhere.
Here's another question for you that's, I think we need to take it up with our Mr. Farrow, who's our attorney, as well. But, you've seen a lot of boards in action. And my feeling is that we go into executive session far more often than we really need to. And that we often go into executive session when we really don't want to have a public discussion because it's of the sensitive nature. Now, my understanding, and I'd love to, have you pitch in on this, but the way the board has interpreted the using people's names, their proper names, is it says that we're not supposed to do that. Now, and yet I know that Adams 12 does, and I believe that the Boulder Valley just recently had open conversations about hiring a new superintendent, and they were talking about the different candidates, and they're talking about the strengths and weaknesses, which is personal, but it's out in the open. Now, my understanding is that the only thing that is prohibited is to have personal attacks, but that it's perfectly okay for us to say we're going to go into executive session to talk about contract XYZ, or to talk about who knows what it is. And that when we're out here and somebody is making a comment, there's no necessary reason for us to refer to that person by the person's title or by the position that they hold. I can say, Mr. Joe Dokes, I disagree with you on this for these reasons, and so forth and so forth. As long as I'm not making a personal attack on that person, it's perfectly okay to mention people's names. So there are kind of two parts there. One is we're putting an awful lot into executive session that I think the public is entitled to hear. And the second thing is when we do have discussions, there's almost never a reason not to use the person's name. And I'd like you to weigh in on that, as well as Mr. Chairman or the Mr. Rowley. You used to be the chair, but I don't see any basis in our policy that says that you have to avoid a person's name. So I'd like, and if we are going to adhere to that rule, I want to see the written policy that states that we have to do that, because I don't think it exists.
So I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
Oh.
So are you talking about if I'm addressing Janelle, a friend of mine, are you saying I wouldn't use her name in this kind of open
That's
discussion?
right. You refer to her as the communications officer
The
or
Kansan.
director or something like that.
So, would that be?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds like it could have been a cultural protocol. Maybe it's a respect position kind of thing. I don't know.
That's not what he's talking about.
Okay.
Because what he's talking about is when somebody's at the dais and they say, so-and-so from this school is doing this, that, or the other.
Are you talking about during public participation
Yes,
time?
during public
The
participation.
U.S. District Court has ruled that when you set aside public participation time, that is a public forum. Controlling that is a local decision-making, and it is a challenge.
Right,
Public forum is very different than a controllable topic on your agenda.
right, and what we have discussed is don't attack the person, attack the position. If the principal was doing this, or the food services person was doing this, but not that person by their name, they're not here to defend themselves.
So here, gosh, so you've set aside a public forum and they are lambasting or attacking, which happens. I would put this out on the table, again, thinking bigger and longer term, that there may be a challenge or an issue with how you listen to your constituents beyond the boardroom. How do people feel involved and valued and listened to, heard? And doesn't mean they get their way, but they are honored for what they are passionate about or concerned about. Where is that happening beyond the boardroom? What's your listening, learning system is what you might ask. And that everybody's dealing with this, you guys. I thought maybe we were going to talk about transparency. In the last 5-8 years, it's one of the increasingly popular core values. But we are limited with transparency as a core value by law to protect students and our employees. You can only go so far with transparency. I would say in general, I don't know how long you want to talk about this, you have something to walk through with your lawyer, but overall, number one, you have something to decide as a team on how you want to live your leadership life. And you can always improve it. You can back down from positional speaking, go back to personal, move everything to civility, move away from public forum and into strategic interaction, all kinds of options.
What's strategic interacting?
Where you have an agenda, and let's say, I'm going to keep picking on Janelle. Agenda item number 4 is about hearing about from a middle school literacy effort, and they come into this room to present not only what they've done, how excited they are about what they've accomplished, explored, and discovered, but they also are passing on to you transferable principles of excellence. And at the same time, people in the audience can contribute to that in managed time, like sound bites of 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you can control the types of conversation. They've agreed to share given these protocols, and it's not a public forum. It's a strategic opportunity for citizens to contribute to your topic, to your agenda. It's really good. Something to think about. And you can manage that time as diligently as you want. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So hear me say, there's a law side of this, a legal side you need to explore. Probably, I don't know how often you meet with your lawyer for the learning side of law, but that would be an encouragement at least annually, maybe at halftime too, halfway through the year. But then also this team protocol, team strengthening thing is probably the biggest. What do you want to see happen with your time? It's your meeting. It's your business meeting. How do you want to sit? Do you want to sit in formality or do you want to sit in collegiality? I don't know. Dave, you have something to say? Something seems to be at the tip of your tongue.
Well, my thing is when we start getting into situations where we start telling our superintendents, sometimes I feel a tendency that we're going to start micromanaging. And I don't believe in micromanaging. And I'll give you a good example, and I've told my peers this before. I remember when I was coaching at the old high school, and they hired a football coach. And one of the players' mother was on the board. He didn't like the coach that they had hired. He wanted the old coach. And so they put a stop on hiring that coach, and they told the athletic director he had to find a new coach. Well, the athletic director come out, brought his keys, dropped them on the principal's desk, and says, "You don't need me as an athletic director. You have 5 athletic directors up on the board." So if we start saying, before superintendent acts that we have to okay everything, then we're starting to say maybe we're micromanaging. And if we're going to start doing that, then why pay? And Mr. Thompson here just showed me the salary basis where we're at is we could save a whole bunch of money if we're going to start doing that. And this is why sometimes I feel if there's something controversial, sure, he's got to come and explain to us, this is what I'm doing or whatever. But we also pay him to make the decisions. I was a teacher, and that's all I can go. I couldn't tell you about administration because I wasn't an administrator. I could tell my assistant coaches what to do, but being the head coach, and I'd be danged if I had an assistant who was trying to override me, him and I would have a conversation. So that's my only fear is that when we start trying to get our nose involved in too much, then eventually it'll lead up to micromanagement, and I don't think that's where we want to be.
Well, those 2 words, too much, is one of the biggest norms of cultures without any kind of focus. It's like you're sort of doomed to get involved in anything and everything unless you've clarified what is your wildly important focus or set of goals, that kind of thing. And when superintendents run into that kind of situation, they have a very hard time figuring out what does the board want, where am I most accountable, what are the priorities, that kind of thing. So I can't tell you, there are mutual benefits for everybody, including all the way to the students, for you guys to keep elevating your work at governing. And it is probably the biggest challenge in public ed leadership right now. We have so much anxiety, so much stress, whether it's political, social, economic, on the governing of our schools. It's unbelievable. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but gosh, if that is our reality, don't we owe it to the kids to really try our best, stepping it up? So, trying to help you.
Again, there are policies and policies. And the board, I believe, needs to deal with the large scope policies.
Right.
And then can leave lesser policies to the discretion of the superintendent. But because school districts all over the country have all sorts of different populations and serve different clientele and so forth, what those big issues are going to be variable. For example, in one community, the sports may be a high priority. In another district, academic performance may be the top priority. In another district, it may be performing arts. And to me, those are community values that the board, as elected officials, need to take a position on. Now, the big issues here in Adams 14, whether we like it or not, is literacy. And my feeling is that is the board's responsibility to set the policy for what kind of a literacy program we're going to have. And
It's pretty common.
It's not the superintendent's job to do that. And we do have friction on that. But again, I think trying to say what's the board's responsibility and what's the superintendent's responsibility, I go back to that kind of the big picture and saying in terms of the 4, 5, 6 or whatever the key values that we represent for the community, what are we representing, what do they want, then we should be making the policies in those big arenas. And then, and in Adams 14, it's, a literacy thing. And if the board, but I feel it is the board's responsibility to say, are we going to have a biliterate program or not? And we vote it up or we vote it down with certain bells and whistles, but we have to forge a position on that. And we have to be able to defend that or present it to the community, and we have to then present it to the superintendent to execute. But I feel that is one of the big issues in Adams 14, and it is inappropriate for the board not to act and to leave something that is that central to our community to the discretion of the superintendent.
So my thought is you guys keep working at this, you're going to get at that. And when we talk about a strategic framework and a strategic sense of doing, you're going to get at that. This absolutely makes sense. It's normative kinds of challenging everywhere we go. It's a stewarding responsibility you've chosen to be part of, and it's stewarding of values, investments called money, but also of time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears. Going back to what you said, Dave, about this thing of micromanagement, it's really interesting. Everybody uses that term. It's really popular in board cultures, but everybody's got a different definition until they sit down and talk through what are our boundaries, what are our focus zones, what are our values. Everybody throws that word out there, but until you start working on the work, you won't have clarity on what you mean or what is micromanagement, which is one of those things that dooms excellence. If you don't have clarity of boundaries, whether it's playing baseball, basketball, or whatever, you're not going to have excellence. And everybody's set up for good leaders to fill vacuums. You hear what I'm saying?
And I agree
Vacuums-
with Dr. Hyatt, but I
vacuums.
think we gotta sit down and find out what our priorities are.
Yes.
Is it biliteracy? I disagree with him. That's not our biggest issue. Our biggest issue is turnaround. Because if we don't get out of turnaround, we won't have to worry about sitting up here in front maybe next year. If the state should come in and decide they're going to take this district. You know, we just had somebody was just presenting that everybody said, well, how can they take our school district over? You know, we only have one high school and this and that. But then somebody told me it's real easy. All they have to do is bring Denver in. They can take us over. They can get Mapleton, take us over. They can get 27J, take us over. Those are our boundaries. Those are the districts that have our boundaries. So there's ways if they wanted to, and I think that is our number one priority, is how can we get out of turnaround? Because then if we don't get out of this turnaround, then you know what? We don't have to worry about all those other decisions, and we have.
And there won't be a board, and there won't be teachers here.
So that's where we have to sit down and talk about where are our priorities as a board.
You guys, there's a concept of an aligned agenda in that collection. What Dave's getting at, to me, is about that left column strategic framework. And there's a set of roles. The last one is modeling excellence. My thought is, in addition to the bigger scheme of the stressors in America, you have a turnaround challenge. Modeling what you actually expect of everybody else, and especially in a turnaround situation, is about learning, applying differently, getting better and better and better. Where's your model? I think that may be one of your challenging questions right now. Are we expecting others to do something we're not willing to do? Are you willing to get better at your function for kids? Modeling that would be, we're here, and a year from now, we're better by far, we're here. And the next season after that, we're even better. That's the model of improvement. Why wouldn't you choose to do that in a turnaround situation? So I looked up at the clock, you guys. We're over time. I know we've got another work session, so it's your meeting. Since I'm looking at the clock, I thought I might say something about it.
Randy, can I make a comment? And this just goes to our board president, and just we were talking about the norms and things, how we want to run it, but I just going to ask our board president that, like during public comments, you know, many times either me or some of my staff is on the receiving end of some of these comments, and they sort of go a little bit too far where I feel that they are maybe harassing, intimidating, or discriminating against us. But all I'm asking is that we don't allow people to cross lines because, again, you said we have to take control and to make sure we do it so that we all understand what the boundaries are and make sure that they respect, not just for the superintendent, but for all individuals that are here. So I think that's something that we control ourselves, correct? During the public comments?
Well, the control aspect of a public forum is a very interesting one. You can do a lot of encouragement, but if somebody from your community wants to set themselves up for being sued,
Okay.
I don't know how you stop that. They'll let something out, they'll be, whatever. You've seen it happen, and it's sort of sad. But oftentimes, we see small things haven't happened. They walked into a meeting room. Nobody even recognized them. Nobody said hello. Nobody walked up and talked to them. It's almost an example of what they experience out there. So how might that dynamic change? So that the place of the public forum isn't the only place of their connection. Something to think about. A lot of strategies and tactics, baseball techniques involved in how we listen and learn from people.
One last thought I have. I agree with Mr. Rollo in terms of the turnaround comment he made. But my feeling is that we've got to be able to do more than one thing at a time. And while the turnaround may be front and center, we should always be looking at different time horizons and different layers. And we should always have a plan B, assuming that whatever we're doing now is plan A. But I think it's very short-sighted to have no consideration laterally or temporally past some time horizon for next steps. And sure, the turnaround is front and center, but it can't be at the exclusion of looking laterally and looking more into the distance. And they are not necessarily competing for the same resources in terms of our thinking or in terms of our resources or in terms of our personnel. And I do believe that just like Jerry Ford, we can chew gum and walk at the same time.
And you're already doing that in some ways. Thoughts, you guys? Did I overdo the timing thing?
No, we just
Stifle
have
anybody?
a presentation that,
Yeah.
that's gonna happen now with Dr. Abrego. Does anybody else have any questions for Randy or comments? Thank you very much, Randy, for your assistance. I took a ton of notes here,
Oh, boy.
as usual.
So you're gonna get something in your email, which will have a SurveyMonkey link, and you guys will take 3 or 4 or 5 minutes and do an appraisal based on these traditional disciplines and practices. Sound good? You've got a big decision coming up about superintendent appraising. So it feels like one of the topics tonight about getting the momentum going is happening. And it actually was happening before tonight. So
now-
just keep this going. Keep these next steps happening.
So do we, Mr. Chairman, do we schedule another time for Mr.
No,
Black
please
to come
don't.
in?
We can, but we'll have conversation
Yeah.
about what it is we're gonna talk about next. Let's do this SurveyMonkey first.
Okay.
We'll let you compile your data, get back to us, and tell us or set up a time when you can come back and tell us what we did, how we did,
Do my
What
baseball coaching.
what you figured out, we were saying,
Okay.
and we'll move from there.
Right?
Thanks, Randy.
And a lot of our stuff, before we decide anything, we usually cover it with the lawyer too. To
Cool.
make sure we're going on the right destination or strain or,
Good.
so he's always the first one we talk to.
Some of my best memories of legal people are the conversations across the table. He's coming from legal, I'm coming from leadership. And they are two distinct animals that can be blended together. Work on both of them. Okay, so I'm out of here.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hey, come here. Good to see you.
Good seeing you again.
Yeah. Marvis, way to go,
Thank you, Randy.
coach.
Appreciate it. I know we're running a little bit behind, Board President, so just let me know and I'll start whenever you say.
Okay.
Is the mic on?
I don't hear you.
It should be on, Dr. J.
Okay. Monica, if you could bring up the PowerPoint. Still can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Check 1, 2.
That's just the superintendents over the state pay. You remember he was asking us.
Just let me know when and I'll start. I'll try to speak loud.
Well, we have about 45
I
minutes.
bring one.
45?
Yeah, we don't start our board meeting till
Okay. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of time in between so that, before you start. And Monica's going to be bringing up the PowerPoint presentation. And then I hope you can follow along either from the projected one or the one that we sent you earlier. Do all the board members have access to the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, you have that? And again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to give you the most important points. So, Monica, on the presentation, if you could please go directly to page 11. It should be District 3rd grade.
Which one are you looking at?
The one you get.
So are you not using any of the first portion?
Please skip around. So it's the PowerPoint, but I just went to this page, the district. And now I'm going to go to these two.
I don't know how yours are numbered.
So it's just the one that says district 3rd grade.
I don't see where you see the
You go
numbers.
back up. I see it on the bottom of my page.
Oh, that's not gonna
Well,
work.
I'll just say district 3rd grade, district 4th grade,
Which one do you need?
3rd grade.
Did you print that from your,
I'm gonna go to just continue to
did you
these.
print that from your,
Email.
oh, okay,
I'll say the name of the slide.
from Friday's update?
Las iniciales.
Okay, are we ready? I'm going to start with the district 3rd grade park assessments.
Okay.
Cuatro copias.
Dr. Abrego, is just for clarification, parks is the state mandated,
Right. I'm getting ready to explain.
Standard,
I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay, and let me answer Dr. Hyde's first question. PARC is the state assessment that we give our students. Last year was the last year we gave PARC. This year and even today, our students are taking the test. It's no longer called PARC. It's called CMAS, Colorado Measures of Academic Success. So they're really one and the same because one is just a follow-up, okay? But the most important thing you want to know about these tests is that's how we are rated as a district. That's how schools are rated. It's not about growth, it's just achievement. When you take this test, can you pass it or not? That's all the state wants to know. And really, these are the standards so that if you can pass the test, you know, that means you're prepared for the next grade level. So in our 3rd graders throughout the district, we have 558 students that took the test last year. Out of those 558 students, you can see that 95 students passed that state test. That was 17%. That was in math. In reading, we had 549 students take the test, and 81 of those students passed it, so that means 14.8%. And I'm not going to go back and review the other numbers from the other years, but you can see basically as a district, we're not doing very good. And I would just say I always try to use the approximately 15% of our kids can pass the state test. And that shows it right there for the 3rd graders.
and just, again, you're just saying, that's not a proficient standard, that's just saying that the child is good enough
This is
to go on to the next grade.
Well, really, it's not even the next grade. It's just saying, did you pass the test or not? Do they have the skills, you know, that they're tested on? Because that's all they are is standards. And then you either pass them or you don't. And when I get down to how we have the reading standards, I'll break it down to another level for you, okay? Maybe that'll help you when
I mean, these are the ones that are being given in April, right?
right now. I mean, we started,
Right,
we're getting them
right. So,
today.
saying this is, they've learned, or they're at the grade level,
Well, they're just
they're at
standards.
the level that they ought to be at.
These are the standards for third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, whatever grade, and they're being tested in reading and in math. After you take the test, there's a cut score, and you either pass it or you don't. That's what it says. Now, it's up to us whether we're going to move the child forward or not, because there's so many different circumstances. You could be real close. So, again, those are basically teachers' decisions. But what I'm trying to get across here is that we're not doing very good. Only 15% of our kids are able to pass the state test in third grade. Monica, if you give me the next one, please. And then I go to fourth grade, and we're looking at in fourth grade, and again, this is probably happening right now because basically all the students did was move up one grade level, right? The ones that were in third are in fourth grade now. So in fourth grade last year, we had in math 570 students that took this test. Out of the 570 students, 67 or 11.8% were able to pass the math. Right next to it in reading, you can see that we tested 566 students, and out of those 566 students, 97 or 17.1 passed the state assessment. Again, I'm just giving you rough numbers when I'm out there in public and I say we need help because only 15% of our students can pass the exam. So, I don't want to give you the other number, but you can see the number of failures is very high. So that's our fourth graders, and I'm going to give you one more, and that is our fifth grade. And again, our fifth grade students, I'm looking at 216, 217. Last year we had 558 students take the test. Out of the 558 students, 52 or 9.3% were able to pass the math portion. In the reading portion, we had 554 students take the test, 97 passed it, and that was 17.5%. But again, I'm not being very specific, but when we speak, we always say about 15% of our students can pass the state exams, right? Again, this year it's the same thing, but it's called CMAS. They're one and the same. It's still our standards. So, is everyone with me so far
Do you
that?
have the fifth grade slide?
What's that?
Do you have the? Oh,
Yes.
there it is. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The statistics I just gave you, there they are right there. We tested 558 students in math, 52 passed. That was 9.3%. In reading, 554 students, 97 passed, 17.5. And again, when I am out in public, I always just use the number 15%. Math or reading, that's what about we pass. So again, I don't want to say the other number, but if you want to say the other number, 85% of our kids are not passing, which is not good at all. So that's just one part that I want to share with you. Monica, if you could go to the slide where it says Park, English, Language, Arts, 216, 217, and I'll give you like a second step on this. It would have been like two or three slides afterwards. If you keep going on yours, keep going down a little bit, and it'll say Park, English Language Arts, 216, 217. And what they're going to do here, okay, now, the first one I gave you was the big picture, right? It just tells you how many kids are passing. And then, like, Dr. Hyde is asking, what exactly are they testing? So now, it's not me, but my group upstairs, they start breaking it down. So when they are actually looking at reading, what can our kids do and what can't they do? So when you look at that slide up there, you see literacy, right? And what I want you to look at is, the first one says 17% are approaching. Approaching is still not passing. Okay, they're getting close, but they're still not passing. How many do not meet? 70. So if you add 70 and 17, you're going to see that in literacy, in third grade, 87% of our kids cannot pass that part of the reading portion. What is literacy? Literacy, when they're doing that part, is they're basically reading nonfiction. Can they do that? And you can see 87% of our kids can't do that. When I go into the next one for our third graders, information literacy. First of all, what is information literacy? Those are real stories, the true stories, okay? And on that portion of the reading exam, how many of our third graders cannot pass that? 84%. I'm not giving you numbers now, actual students, it's just the percentages. 84%. Again, not good, not good. And then you go into vocabulary, and I think everyone here knows what vocabulary is. When they're, reading, do they know what the words mean? Because if you don't know what the words mean, you can't answer all the questions. So vocabulary, again, I'm not going to add them for you, 60 and 70, but it comes up to 86% of our students have difficulty passing that portion of the reading. So again, not good. Writing expression, what does that mean? Writing expression is when they read their stories, can they communicate it clearly in written form, right? So again, we have 72% of our students, when they're taking the test of third graders, they can't pass that part. And the last part is writing conventions, and basically that's just your grammar. Do our kids know to start a sentence with a capital letter, put a period? So again, they get great on all this. So when we're looking at that, the conventions, how many of our third graders can't do that? 82%. So the first part was the big one I showed you just in reading. Now this is breaking down to the actual components. Again, I don't do all this, but I have a team upstairs. They have to analyze all this. How do we fix this? So that's what we try to do throughout the school year.
Dr. Abrego, as I look at that data, I don't see really any trend. I don't see any outliers. And I would like to know whether you kind of agree with my assessment.
The only thing I can say, and I don't real deep into the data, but I can just say that if you got over 85% of kids that are not passing, that is not good. That's why our schools are rated low. That's why our districts are rated low. So that's all I'm saying is we don't have enough kids that are able to pass the state assessments. So we need to do something about it.
I mean, all I'm saying is that I think most of the differences there are probably could be accountable by statistical noise, so to speak.
Well, I'm not looking at all that. I'm just looking at, we don't have enough kids passing. If you compare us to the other districts and throughout the state, we're just too low. We're too low. We need to move up. And again, it's not just in third grade. Go ahead and look at fourth grade, and you can see, I'm just going to give you the totals. Literacy, 84% of our fourth graders can't do it. Information literacy, 81%. Vocabulary, 82. Writing expressions, 72. And again, conventions, 82. So again, the numbers are not good. We have our work cut out for us, and that's what we need to do here. We need to continue to improve in all these areas, figure out how we're going to help our kids improve so that when they take their state test like this week and next week, they can pass them. Again, I'm going to go to the fifth grade, just going to look at the totals. Literacy, 89%. That means like 9 out of 10 kids can't do it. So we do need help. Information, 81%. Vocabulary, 80%. Writing expressions, 78%. And writing conventions, again, 79%. And all I'm saying is we need to do things different. We need to improve. We need to analyze how we're going to help our kids become better at learning these skills. So,
And what's your conclusion?
I don't have a conclusion. Again, we just keep working. But what I do is, after I look at this, I'm going to just tell you basically our kids need to learn how to read. Once they can read, everything else will fall in line. So we need to do that at early stage. So that was our English language arts. That's a test we're being given. If you go to the next slide, let's see how we do in math, okay? And again, in math, when our kids are tested, you can see the same thing that we did with the reading. Now I broke it down for you in math. So what does major content mean? Those are like the big standards. Remember when we were talking how we want our teachers to teach us standards? There's certain standards that are very important. Those are the most important ones that our students have to address. Those are like number sense, computations, the basics. If you don't have this, like if you're in first grade, you can't count. You're not going to be able to move on and do the other things. So right now, on that area for third grade in math, major content would be, remember I said those are the big standards. The supporting content would be like the standards you cover, but they're not as important as the other ones. Reasoning is, can they tell you how they got the answer? Because, if you can figure out and you can explain the answer, that would be the reasoning component. And then the last one is modeling, and that's when they give you like maybe graphs or things that you have to demonstrate that you can do and figure out. But those are the main things that they're being tested on right now, this week in our district and next week. But this is again from last year, and we hope to improve greatly, and we have to improve greatly. But on major content, you can see our third graders. Again, I'm not going to do the addition for you. 33 are approaching. It's still not passing. 42 does not meet, not passing. But if you add those two, 75% of our kids in third grade cannot do that. Support content, 63% can't do that. Reasoning, 45, and modeling, 56. Again, all I'm saying is the numbers need to change because our kids, if they can't do these things, they're not going to be able to pass the state test.
So, Dr. Abrego, so I'm trying to look ahead and say, how do we change? How do we influence these kids with different results? You know, is it the curriculum? Is it the pedagogy? Is it the logistics? Is it the software? Is it, you know, I could come up with probably
Right.
8 or 10 large factors that all have an impact on student learning. Where is the district in terms of saying this is where we, you know, because we have limited resources. So, I mean, one is we just do the shotgun approach. If we don't have a blind clue as to what's effective and what's not, then you do the, you know, the sprinkle effect. You know, throw a little money here and there and everything, and just hope for the best. But another approach is to say, if we know that time on task or working with the parents to do reading at home or to do math at home or to use Flipkart. You know, I mean, all I'm saying is that without getting into the weeds, I think it's really important if we really want to get those numbers to change drastically, not just, you know, 1 or 2 points.
You said
up
the
or
key
down.
word, drastically.
Yeah. We then need to know what's going to be most effective. You know, is it professional development? Is it Chromebooks? Is it more recess time?
Right.
Is it encouraging the parents to spend more time with their kids reading? You know, those are very discrete, different ways of attacking the problem. And I would like to know what you and your staff have in the way of ideas for how we solve this problem.
And again, just to hopefully clarify for Dr. Hyde and all the whole board, all this information they would do, it's all data. And I told you, in the past, we didn't have a department that would analyze all this data, look at it, give it to our curriculum, give it to our schools, give it down to the classroom teacher, because everything that I'm presenting to you right now, this has already been done with our principals, this has been done with our teachers, and these are things that we said, we need to change these things, figure it out in your schools, and people have. And then when we're testing at this time right now, they've already implemented many things that they could do to improve on this. I'm just going to give you one example. I think when I approached one school, I said, at your school, only 1 out of 80 kids was able to pass the state test. They went back and they implemented some very good strategies in math. I can't tell you exactly what they're going to do on the CMAS, but at least the assessments we have and the other tests that we give, our formative assessments, are predicting that they're going to do better. So we monitor this, and when you go in schools, you can see the different colors. Remember, when you go in schools, I always tell my board, go in there, look at their main, where they put their data in this one area of their schools, and look from the very beginning, the kids that are in red, and see how they're moving them up, how they're getting the green, because all of our schools are doing that. They have a plan, and by getting them to that green, you know, we can't say 100%, but we're predicting that those kids are going to pass this test. So those numbers, again, have to go up. That's everything that we do to make sure that more kids are passing. More kids are passing tests, because that's achievement. Growth is nice, but achievement is what we get tested on. So I don't know if you want me to read all the numbers for you, but you can see again, I'm not going to predict anything. All I'm just going to say is what Dr. Hyde said. We have to figure out. That's what our teams are doing, figuring out how to do it better. And again, if we did our job, when we take this test, you're going to see those scores keep going up and up and up. The next slide I'm going to share with you is, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. And now I'm going to take you to our biliteracy data. And again, Monica, I'm just going to go on the summary. If you could go, it's at the very beginning. It would say summary of results. And I'll try to do my best to explain that to you. It would be my first grade cohort. Let me just see, 77? Yep, that's the one. And again, I showed you one data from the big portion of reading and math, then I broke it down. Now I'm just going to give you an example of our biliteracy students. And this is a biliteracy students that started in first grade. That means they have been in our program first grade, second grade, and third grade. How many students were there? There were 61. And now this is the first year that we're actually using DIBELS to figure out or to assess how the students' reading abilities, okay, if they're reading at grade level or not. So if you look at our biliteracy cohort of 61 students, those students are now in third grade, and we had 61 out of 61, 47 of the students are below grade level expectations, and that's on the English DIBELS. And that accounts for 77%. So if you look at the opposite, if there's 47 that are below grade level, we have 14 that are above grade level, so that's 23%. Okay? And then we also give the same test, it's called EDEL, in Spanish. So again, of that cohort, there are 61 students. 52 of those students, when they were tested in the Spanish part, were below grade level, and that's 85%. And then, again, if you see 9 of the students are at grade level, 15%. So that's our biliteracy students that have been in the program 3 years. They're in third grade right now. One thing that I want to see as a superintendent and our team is, let's see how these students do on this CMAS that's going to be given this week and next week, because that's going to be important for us. And again, the one on the right hand are students that were not in our biliteracy program. That's a cohort of 63 students. How did they do? We had, out of 63 students, 37 of those students were below grade level for 59%. 26 were above or at or above for 41%. And again, we're just doing a comparison, but that is our data for the students that were in the biliteracy program in grades 1, 2, and 3. Now, again, the next one I'm going to share with you are the ones that started in kindergarten. So the next slide is going to show, Monica, if you could find a summary of our kindergarten students.
Is it that one? Is it that one?
One more, because I just want the summary. I'm going to run out of time, so I want to get to the bottom. Okay, now these are the students in our biliteracy cohort. There were 64 students that took the English one. And remember, these students started in kindergarten, so they're in kindergarten, first grade, they're in second grade right now. And again, when these students were tested on DIBELS, we had, of the 64, 36% of the students were below grade level for 56%. That means 28 were at or above for 44%. When they were given the same assessment in Spanish, we had different numbers. Of the 63, 39 of the students were below grade level for 62%, and then 24 were at or grade level in Spanish for 38%. And then the portion on the right will just compare how they did compared to our non-biliteracy students, and you can see those numbers are a little bit different. Again, we have, when those students were tested on DIBELS, of the 52 students, 32 were below grade level, so that's 62%, and 20 were at or above for 38%. So those are things we look at, and those are, I think, numbers that we wanted to share with you. And then another important component, too, is we look at our data, but we're also looking at, we have other questions about our biliteracy, and these are questions that I was asking our team, and again, we didn't have quite all the answers, but some of the things that we're looking at to improve our program, or questions, concerns we had, is in our biliteracy program, what is the entry criteria? And that's something that we have to have solid, because how do we know who we're going to put in biliteracy if we don't have the criteria? Also, what's the criteria to get out of the biliteracy program? So those things, again, have to be in place when we continue the program. And those are concerns I had. I also had concerns, or we all had concerns about the class size, because we have to be fair to all our teachers. When we have a biliteracy, we don't want to have biliteracy classrooms that are real large, right, that have 30 students per class, while the others have smaller numbers, or vice versa. We don't want to have biliteracy students of 10 that causes our regular classrooms to have high numbers. So that's a thing we also have to look at. Another thing we're looking at for our biliteracy is the total number of minutes that we're going to use in instruction. How many minutes are we going to use in Spanish versus English? So again, these are all components that we're looking at before we move forward. Another thing, too, is the professional development. How are we going to support all the implementation of biliteracy? Those are very important things that we have to ask and have answers to. Also, on the growth benchmarks, how are we going to know if our program is successful? I mean, I just gave you some data. I don't know if you figure if that's success or not, but we have to keep digging deeper and figure out what is our determination when we achieve success.
Dr. Abrego, when you look at the biliteracy cohort versus the non-biliteracy cohort, what overall conclusion do you draw from the data that you've presented to us so far?
It's probably what I've been saying all along, that not just all our kids, we need to move all our kids up. We have too many that are not passing, whether they be ELL students or regular students. It all comes down to not enough students are passing the test. If you look at it, it's still going to remain with the 15%, that are moving up. So whatever
I don't see a big difference between the two. So
Yeah.
why would you do away with the Literacy Squared program if it's not doing any worse than anything
because
else?
we don't want, again, 15% passing is not acceptable. I don't think that when you brought me on board, you wanted 15% passing to go get to 20%. We asked that we've got to move up our achievement to high numbers, because if we don't do that, our schools are going to remain DNFs. We don't want that.
I agree, but we have no evidence of an alternative doing better.
Well, we're hoping to get there, and that's what we're trying to do. Everything that we're implementing, I told you, when we take our test again, if we see better numbers, then we know that we're doing some good things. But it's all about continuing to get better. But again, for our biliteracy program, we want to have a parent-teacher handbook so that all parents understand all the things I said. How do the kids get in? How do they get out? How are you going to measure success for your students? Again, we want to continue with the biliteracy. I said we're not eliminating anything. We're just taking a quick pause because we're at K1, 2, 3. But again, we want to continue it. How? We're not quite sure, because another thing is, even if we can't do it at all schools, there's ways we can continue by just having, it at magnet schools or certain areas. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and that's what we're going to be trying to do this year that we call a pause, or year zero, is that we need to look at all these things, because if we're going to continue, we want to have the best program possible to help not just our ELL students, but all of our students, because if we can't figure this out very quickly, as our board president said, the state's going to come in and take us over, and we don't want that. So it's very important that we have success, again, not just in this program, but in all programs.
So what do you do, sir, with the next fall? What do those fourth graders do? Because you hit the pause button, but the kids don't hit the pause button. They keep growing.
Well, they're going to keep going.
From one grade to the next.
They are going to keep going, and they're going to continue to provide English language development. That means they're going to continue to get help for our ELLs. It just will not be in this biliteracy block that they were in. And then the other thing that's very, very important, if, again, we want to continue biliteracy, we have to have outstanding teachers. So that's another thing we're going to be looking at this year. how do we get teachers to move on to the next grade level? If we're going to have it in grades 4 and 5, we just can't put any teacher in there. We want highly qualified teachers, again, that are going to really help us get to where we want. So that's another thing that we are going to be looking at. And again, we want to make sure that once we do come back and put this whole program in, we want to sustain it, because it's not going to be for 1 year. It's going to be for, long term. So again, you asked how are we going to do that, and again, we have a plan on how we're going to do that. The way we're going to do that is we're going to have an evaluation of our, I'm going to call it ELD program, because we have not had a very thorough review since about 2013. So to do that, we are going to have a team come in, a committee that we're going to be presenting to you, and we want them to come in and do a review. Let us know where we're at. Let us, tell us about our program. So that's going to be one step where people come in and look at all the schools to see what we have and if it's working. And then we're going to have a second committee come in, and again, they're going to be experts from university, from the Colorado Department of Education. We want some staff members from here, some administrators, some teachers come in, and just really, now let's write our plan, ELD plan, on how we're going to function and how our program is going to look at all the schools. English language development, could be biliteracy, and if after that pause button, we do plan on implementing 4th grade and then to the 5th grade, but we just want to do it right. That's the key thing. We want to make sure that we have highly qualified teachers, and then once we implement it, we're going to keep running our data and make sure it's successful and keep it going. But again, there's many different ways you can provide service for your English language learners, but the key thing is that teacher, having that highly qualified teacher and fidelity to whatever program we have. Everybody has to buy into it and do it correctly.
Are we able to get highly qualified biliterate teachers?
We're trying our very best. We don't have them all the time, but we're doing our best to recruit. We're working, I think, with other universities to make sure that they can help us, because the kind of teacher that we want here is above and beyond the norm, because you can have your endorsement, but if you can't speak Spanish in our district, you're not going to be able to help us with the biliteracy block.
But is that a rationale for not having the biliteracy program?
No, I told you the rationale for the biliteracy program was just taking a pause because we don't have all these questions answered. How do I know who goes into biliteracy? There's nothing written that tells who goes in. So how are you putting students in there now? We don't know. So I'm just saying there are too many questions that we have to answer. Once we have the answer to all those, we can move forward, because we will have an explanation on, if any parent says, I want my child in there, here's the criteria, here's how you get in.
Would it be helpful for you doing your job if the board were to come up with a policy?
I don't know about
way,
you can come up with a policy, but the most important help that's going to be for me is when I have these experts come in from these universities and the Colorado Department of Education and our own staff here telling me how to improve the program. And once we write that plan, the English language development plan for the future, that's the most important thing.
Would you be willing to have me sit in on those meetings?
You're welcome, but again,
I'd like to.
It's going to be a committee. Again, you're welcome to sit in, but remember the experts of the committee are the ones that are doing the work for us, so you're welcome to sit in, but these are people that are experts from universities, from various places that...
I'm familiar with quite a bit of it.
Okay. But remember, okay, and I said you're welcome to sit in, but
Okay.
remember who's, why we're hiring these people, okay,
Yeah,
or why
so
we're
if you
having
could
them.
just make sure I get notices of the meetings, I'd appreciate it.
So, and again, during the superintendent's report, I'll read exactly what we're going to do, and I want to be upfront with everyone on what we're doing. Again, and I want to tell you, Dr. Hyde, we're not eliminated. We're going to continue everything that we have done. We're not changing anything. We are taking that quick pause, but it's only to improve it. Once we get past that, it'll be back, and hopefully even better. And I knew I was going to run short, so do you have any questions that I can answer for you? I hope that this is what you wanted, Mr. President Archuleta, because I try to give you a little bit of data, but again, I'm not trying to skew anything. The bottom line is that we don't have enough kids passing, and we have to figure out how to keep improving our district.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
So we've got about 10 minutes before our regular board meeting, so let's take a break. We'll be back at 6:30.